The 1970s stand as one of the most transformative decades in British music history, producing innovations in glam rock, punk, folk, and progressive sounds that would influence generations to come. Yet, behind the chart successes, sold-out tours, and cultural revolutions lay a darker reality. 10 prominent British musical figures lost their lives during this decade, each death revealing different vulnerabilities within the entertainment industry. From vehicular accidents to financial exploitation, from medical emergencies to substance dependencies, these tragedies exposed systemic failures in artist protection and support. This document examines each case with factual precision, documenting the circumstances, dates, and lasting implications of these losses. 1. To Marc Bolan, the Electric Warrior. Marc Bolan established himself as the primary architect of glam rock in Britain during the early 1970s. His band, T-Rex, generated such intense fan reaction that the British press coined the term T-Rextasy, drawing comparisons to the earlier Beatlemania phenomenon. Bolan's distinctive appearance, featuring corkscrew curls and feather boas, combined with his musical innovations, defined the aesthetic and sonic landscape of the era's first half. The musician maintained an extensive collection of luxury automobiles, including a white Rolls-Royce. However, he never obtained a driving license. Multiple sources document that Bolan expressed to friends and family members a persistent premonition regarding an early death, specifically involving an automobile. This fear proved sufficiently strong that he refused to learn to drive, relying entirely on other individuals for transportation. On September 16, 1977, during the early morning hours, Bolan was traveling as a passenger in a purple Mini 1275 GT operated by his partner, Gloria Jones, an American singer. The pair were returning from a celebration at a restaurant in Mayfair. Approximately 2 miles from Bolan's residence, on a road in Barnes, southwest London, the vehicle departed the roadway, penetrated a fence, and struck a sycamore tree. The collision resulted in Bolan's immediate death. The response from the British music community was substantial. David Bowie and Rod Stewart attended the funeral services. A large floral arrangement in the shape of a swan was displayed. The sycamore tree at the crash site became an informal memorial, with fans continuing to leave tributes at the location in subsequent decades. Bolan left behind a son and a catalog of recordings that maintained commercial relevance. His death occurred as punk rock was gaining commercial prominence in Britain, with many observers noting the symbolic significance of his passing as representing the conclusion of the optimistic early 1970s era. 2. Sid Vicious, the face of punk's destruction. John Simon Ritchie joined the Sex Pistols in 1977 under the stage name Sid Vicious, replacing the original bassist. His recruitment was based primarily on aesthetic considerations rather than musical proficiency. His appearance, featuring spiked hair and a padlock necklace, aligned with the punk movement's visual identity, making him a prominent representative of the genre. Vicious's relationship with Nancy Spungen, an American woman he met during this period, became increasingly central to his life. Multiple sources document the intensity and volatility of their relationship, which was marked by mutual substance dependency. Following the Sex Pistols' dissolution during an American tour, Vicious and Spungen relocated to the Chelsea Hotel in New York City, specifically Room 100. On the morning of October 12, 1978, hotel staff discovered Spungen deceased in the bathroom. She had sustained a fatal stab wound. Police arrested Vicious immediately. The musician was reportedly in a state of severe intoxication and could not provide coherent statements regarding the previous night's events. He was charged with murder. Debate continues among researchers and associates regarding whether the death resulted from accident, mutual agreement, or other circumstances. Vicious was released on bail but exhibited severe psychological distress. On February 2, 1979, less than 4 months after Spungen's death, Vicious attended a gathering celebrating his release from custody. That evening, he consumed a fatal quantity of heroin. His mother discovered him deceased the following morning. Vicious's death is widely considered to mark the definitive conclusion of the initial British punk movement. His case illustrates the absence of adequate support systems for young performers dealing with substance dependencies and mental health challenges within the 1970s music industry framework. 3. Pete Ham, betrayed by management. Pete Ham led the band Badfinger, which achieved commercial success with recordings including Day After Day and Baby Blue. The Beatles organization selected Badfinger for their Apple Records label, positioning the group for significant commercial success. Ham co-wrote Without You, which became a #1 hit for Harry Nilsson in 1972, and subsequently for Mariah Carey, generating substantial royalties. Despite the commercial performance of these recordings, Ham experienced increasing financial difficulties by 1975. The band's manager, Stan Polly, had established complex financial structures and accounts. Ham purchased a house in Surrey and was expecting a child with his partner. When he attempted to access funds to meet his financial obligations, he discovered the money was inaccessible. The situation reached a critical point in April 1975. Ham attempted repeatedly to contact Polly for clarification, but received no response. On the night of 23 April, Ham took his own life. He was discovered the following morning in his garage studio. A note found at the scene expressed his despair and included specific criticism of his manager, whom he held responsible for his circumstances. The financial complications created by the management continued to affect the surviving band members. Tom Evans, Ham's bandmate and close friend, later took his own life in 1983, unable to resolve the ongoing legal and financial difficulties. Ham's case represents one of the most documented instances of managerial exploitation in British music history, demonstrating the vulnerability of artists who lack control over their own financial affairs. 4. Richard Beckinsale, the unexpected loss. Richard Beckinsale achieved prominence through his performances in 2 successful British sitcoms, Rising Damp and Porridge. His portrayal of Lenny Godber, a naive prisoner in Porridge, opposite Ronnie Barker, established him as a significant comedic talent. By 1979, he was working on a new sitcom titled Bloomers. In the days preceding his death, Beckinsale reported feeling unusually fatigued and experiencing discomfort in his arms. These symptoms were attributed to overwork. He was married to Judy Lowe, and they had a 5-year-old daughter, Kate Beckinsale, who would later pursue an acting career. On 19 March 1979, Beckinsale died in his sleep from a massive heart attack. Medical examination revealed a congenital heart defect that had remained undetected throughout his life. The sudden nature of his death shocked the British television industry and public. Ronnie Barker reportedly experienced profound grief and was unable to speak publicly for several days following the announcement. Beckinsale's death highlighted the limitations of medical screening for performers and the potential for undetected congenital conditions. His programs continue to air in reruns, are serving as documentation of his work. The loss was particularly noted given his age and the absence of typical risk factors associated with sudden cardiac death. 5. Keith Moon, the prescription that killed. Keith Moon served as the drummer for The Who. His playing style significantly influenced the development of rock percussion. His behavior offstage was characterized by excess, with documented incidents including driving vehicles into swimming pools and causing extensive property damage at hotels. However, these actions masked severe alcohol dependency and social anxiety. By 1978, Moon was 32 years old, but exhibited physical deterioration beyond his chronological age, and he had gained considerable weight and struggled with the physical demands of performance. Attempting to address his alcohol dependency, Moon sought medical assistance. A physician prescribed heminevrine, a sedative intended to manage alcohol withdrawal symptoms. On September 6, 1978, Moon attended a party hosted by Paul McCartney celebrating Buddy Holly. Attendees reported that Moon appeared relatively calm and discussed plans to settle into a more stable lifestyle. He returned to the flat he was renting at 12 Curzon Place in Mayfair. This property, owned by Harry Nilsson, had a previous connection to tragedy. Cass Elliot of the Mamas and the Papas had died in the same bedroom 4 years earlier, on July 29, 1974. Moon took a quantity of his prescribed heminevrin tablets and did not wake. The coroner's verdict determined he had consumed 32 tablets, a lethal dose. The death was ruled accidental. The irony was documented by multiple sources. Moon had survived years of dangerous behavior, but died from prescription medication while attempting to become sober. His death had a profound effect on The Who. Pete Townshend and other band members expressed devastation. The classic lineup of the band effectively ended. Following this second death in the Curzon Place flat, Harry Nilsson sold the property. Moon's drumming continues to be studied, and his influence on rock percussion remains significant. 6. Sandy Denny, the preventable tragedy. Sandy Denny established herself as a prominent folk rock vocalist through her work with Fairport Convention and as a solo artist. She holds the distinction of being the only guest vocalist to appear on a Led Zeppelin studio album, contributing to The Battle of Evermore on their 4th album. Her composition, Who Knows Where the Time Goes, demonstrated sophisticated lyrical ability. Denny struggled with severe insecurity regarding her appearance and professional worth. She developed a significant alcohol dependency. By the late 1970s, her behavior had become erratic, straining her marriage to musician Trevor Lucas. Despite giving birth to a daughter, Georgia, in 1977, Denny continued to experience difficulties. In March 1978, while on holiday in Cornwall with her family, Denny fell down a staircase and struck her head on a stone floor. She did not seek immediate medical attention, either due to her condition or reluctance to consult physicians. Weeks later, back in London, she began experiencing severe headaches. By this time, her husband had departed for Australia with their daughter, concerned about the child's safety. On April 17, 1978, Denny was found unconscious at a friend's residence. She had collapsed into a coma. The fall in Cornwall had caused a traumatic brain injury that had progressively worsened. She died 4 days later at Atkinson Morley Hospital in Wimbledon without regaining consciousness. Denny's death represented a failure of support systems. Her funeral was attended by prominent figures in the British folk scene. Her recordings continue to be studied for their technical and emotional qualities. The preventable nature of her death, resulting from an initially treatable injury that went unaddressed, made the tragedy particularly notable. 7. Leslie Harvey, electrocution on stage. Leslie Harvey served as guitarist for the blues rock band Stone the Crows. The group was managed by Peter Grant, who also managed Led Zeppelin, suggesting the band had significant industry backing and commercial potential. Harvey was in a relationship with the band's vocalist, Maggie Bell. On the 3rd of May, 1972, Stone the Crows was preparing to perform at the Top Rank Ballroom in Swansea, Wales. During the sound check on a rainy evening, Harvey approached a microphone stand, and the equipment had not been properly grounded. When Harvey, wearing his guitar, made contact with the microphone, an electrical circuit was completed. A high-voltage current passed through the guitar strings and the microphone, electrocuting him. Some audience members initially believed this was a theatrical element of the performance. Band members and crew attempted to break the electrical connection, but the voltage was too strong. Harvey was transported to hospital, but was pronounced dead. He was 27 years old. This incident highlighted severe deficiencies in venue safety standards throughout Britain. The combination of wet conditions, ungrounded equipment, and inadequate electrical safety protocols created a fatal situation. Following Harvey's death, Stone the Crows attempted to continue with a replacement guitarist, but Maggie Bell and other members found it impossible to continue, and the band dissolved. Harvey's death led to increased attention to electrical safety in performance venues and contributed to the development of modern safety regulations. His case demonstrates the physical dangers that musicians faced due to inadequate technical standards during this period. 8. Paul Kossoff, Addiction's Toll. Paul Kossoff was the lead guitarist for the band Free. He was the son of actor David Kossoff. His guitar playing on recordings such as All Right Now in 1970 established him as a significant blues guitarist while still in his teens. His distinctive vibrato and emotional playing style influenced subsequent guitarists. When Free disbanded, Kossoff experienced this as a personal rejection. He began using sedatives to manage his emotional state. This substance dependency progressively damaged his health and affected his ability to play guitar. Friends documented that his coordination deteriorated significantly. In 1975, he experienced a medical emergency in which he was clinically dead for 35 minutes before being revived. By 1976, Kossoff was attempting to re-establish his career with a new band, Backstreet Crawler. The group was touring America. On 19 March 1976, Kossoff boarded a flight from Los Angeles to New York. During the flight, he fell asleep. When the crew attempted to wake him, they discovered he had died. The cause was determined to be a pulmonary embolism, a direct result of his weakened physical condition from substance dependency. Following his death, his father, David Kossoff, established a foundation to address drug dependency issues. The foundation worked to provide support and education. Paul Kossoff's guitar work on All Right Now and other free recordings continues to be studied. His death at 25 represented the loss of a distinctive musical voice. 9. Nick Drake, the unrecognized genius. Nick Drake came from an upper-middle-class background and studied at Cambridge University. He possessed an advanced guitar technique and a distinctive vocal quality. During his active career, he released 3 albums, 5 Leaves Left, Brighter Later, and Pink Moon. These albums sold fewer than 5,000 copies combined upon initial release. Drake suffered from severe social anxiety and depression. He was unable to perform live or conduct interviews, which limited his ability to promote his work. He interpreted the poor commercial performance of his albums as personal rejection. His final album, Pink Moon, recorded in 2 nights, consisted of Drake's voice and guitar with minimal additional instrumentation. By 1974, Drake had ceased functioning as a professional musician and returned to his parents' home, Farleys, in the Warwickshire countryside. Friends and family described him as severely depressed, often sitting in silence for extended periods. On the morning of 25 November 1974, his mother found him deceased. He had died during the night from an overdose of the antidepressant tryptazole, amitriptyline. Whether the overdose was intentional or accidental remains undetermined, as Drake left no note. A book about the myth of Sisyphus was found on his bedside table. At the time of his death, his passing received minimal coverage in the music press. Decades after his death, Drake's music gained substantial recognition. Use of his song Pink Moon in a 1999 Volkswagen commercial sparked renewed interest. His albums now sell more copies monthly than they sold during his entire lifetime. His grave has become a site of pilgrimage. Drake's case illustrates the difficulty faced by artists whose work does not receive contemporary recognition and the mental health challenges that can result from perceived professional failure. 10. Ian Curtis, Joy Division's lost voice. England Ian Curtis fronted the post-punk band Joy Division, which emerged from Manchester in the late 1970s. His baritone voice and introspective lyrics distinguished the band's sound. Curtis's stage performance included intense, jerky movements that mirrored the epileptic seizures he experienced. Curtis had been diagnosed with epilepsy. The medication prescribed to manage the condition was heavy and caused severe mood swings and exhaustion. The flashing lights used during performances triggered seizures, creating a conflict between his medical needs and his role as a performer. Curtis's personal life was deteriorating. He was married to Deborah Curtis, and they had a young daughter. However, he was also involved in a relationship with a Belgian journalist, Annick Honoré. The lyrics to Love Will Tear Us Apart, written during this period, directly reflected his emotional state. In May 1980, Joy Division was scheduled to begin their first American tour. For Curtis, who was concerned about his health and personal situation, this tour represented overwhelming pressure rather than opportunity. On the evening of the 17th of May, he returned to his home in Macclesfield in an attempt to reconcile with his wife regarding divorce proceedings. After she departed, he spent the night alone, watching Werner Herzog's film Stroszek and listening to The Idiot by Iggy Pop. In the early hours of May 18, 1980, hours before he was scheduled to fly to New York, Curtis took his own life. He was discovered that morning by his wife. He was 23 years old. Joy Division immediately ceased to exist as a band, with the surviving members later forming New Order. Curtis's death highlighted the inadequacy of medical treatment for epilepsy during this period and the absence of mental health support for musicians. His tombstone in Macclesfield bears the inscription, "Love Will Tear Us Apart," from his most famous song. Curtis's death is considered to mark the end of the post-punk era and the beginning of a more introspective period in British alternative music. These 10 deaths, occurring between 1972 and 1980, reveal multiple systemic failures within the British music industry during the 1970s. Safety standards. The deaths of Marc Bolan and Leslie Harvey resulted from inadequate safety protocols. Bolan's death in a vehicular accident and Harvey's electrocution during a performance exposed failures in basic safety considerations. These incidents led to subsequent improvements in venue electrical standards and transportation safety awareness. Financial exploitation. Pete Ham's death directly resulted from managerial financial malfeasance. The complex financial structures created by his manager left him unable to access his own earnings despite significant commercial success. This case became a pivotal example used in subsequent discussions of artist rights and financial transparency. Medical screening. Richard Beckinsale's death from an undetected congenital heart defect highlighted limitations in medical screening for performers. The absence of comprehensive health assessments meant that potentially fatal conditions went undiagnosed. Substance dependency. The deaths of Sid Vicious, Keith Moon, and Paul Kossoff all involved substance dependency. The absence of adequate treatment facilities and support systems meant that musicians dealing with dependency issues received insufficient care. Moon's death from prescription medication while attempting sobriety particularly illustrated the inadequacy of medical approaches to addiction during this period. Mental health. Sandy Denny, Nick Drake, and Ian Curtis all suffered from severe depression and anxiety. The music industry of the 1970s lacked mental health support infrastructure. Drake and Curtis both took their own lives, while Denny's death resulted from an injury she sustained during a period of severe psychological distress. The absence of adequate mental health care and the stigma surrounding mental illness meant these individuals received insufficient support. Age factor. Several of these musicians were members of what would later be termed the 27 Club, dying at age 27. Pete Ham and Leslie Harvey. Paul Kossoff was 25, Nick Drake was 26, Marc Bolan was 29, Sandy Denny was 31, Richard Beckinsale was 31, Keith Moon was 32, Sid Vicious was 21, and Ian Curtis was 23. The youth of these individuals meant they died with significant unrealized potential. The cumulative effect of these deaths on British music was substantial. Each loss removed a distinctive voice or talent. Several of these musicians have achieved greater recognition posthumously than they received during their lifetimes, particularly Nick Drake, whose work is now considered influential. The circumstances of these deaths contributed to subsequent improvements in industry practices, including enhanced safety regulations, a greater attention to artist financial protection, and increased awareness of mental health and substance dependency issues. These 10 cases, documented in detail here, serve as historical records of both artistic achievement and the vulnerabilities that existed within the entertainment industry structure of the 1970s. The factual documentation of these tragedies provides essential context for understanding both the creative output of this period and the human costs that accompanied it.